Well, he fights for farmers every day, and he's well aware of the challenges that they face. Joining me now is Steve Nelson, president of the Nebraska Farm Bureau. Steve, good morning to you. Thanks for being here.
Well, I'm very happy to be on with you this morning.
I guess, Steve, let's start here at the beginning of 2019, right? Things were already difficult, then a bunch of rain fell on a bunch of snow, and it was really went from bad to worse, right?
Well, that's right. And even if you go before the weather, I mean, that's the weather piece of it. But we had difficult times in agriculture in Nebraska prior to these storms hitting. First of all, winter had not been easy. So cattle that are outdoors, of course, had been struggling with a difficult winter. And then we have tight economic times, had tight economic times at the beginning of this year with little to no margin in practically everything that we grow and raise here in Nebraska. So not only did we have extraordinary weather events that took place, historical weather events that took place, we have that's happening at a time when we have difficult economics as well.
Yeah, I wonder if you can quantify, in all of the time that you've spent in agriculture here in the state, just how devastating this particular weather event was to the state.
Well, it's historic because not only because of the type of weather that we had. When you think about the large area of the state that was covered by this, really complicates it as well. So you look at practically every river basin in the state of Nebraska being affected by the storm, having record river flows or river levels on practically every basin in the state of Nebraska at some time after the storm. And then that happening in about, or having effects on about 3/4 of the counties in the state. Well, typically we might have a snowstorm, we're relatively used to that, or we might have flooding on a basin or two. The widespread nature of this was very significant as well.
Very different from the 2011 flood, right? Because that was concentrated on the Missouri River mostly, and this was really, I mean, the whole state.
That's right. And there are areas of the state that were affected in ways that they've never been affected before. You've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people who have lived on farms for more than 100 years and never seen the water and damage that they had this year.
So the federal response to this, right, was really unprecedented in its quickness.
Well, that's right, and I think, attribute that to a number of things. First of all, I think the state of Nebraska stood up quickly to address the issue. Governor Ricketts has done a really good job in this area, leading the state and making sure that the federal government was aware of what was happening in Nebraska. Lots of other groups too worked to make sure that there was a recognition of how unusual this storm was, so that we could start to put together those kinds of assistance packages that are so badly needed by those that have been affected the way that they have.
Yeah, so on one hand, Trump administration really did some great work getting the aid here super quickly. At the same time this year, though, commodity prices are really not where anybody wants them to be. And then there were those 31 waivers given to oil refiners. Can you explain kind of how those negatively impact corn growers?
Well, I think, maybe just to put it in a relative comparison, we've worked a long time to build the ethanol industry in the state of Nebraska and in this part of the country. It's been very beneficial to the state, and that's not just corn farmers who grow the corn, but it's the livestock producers who use the produce from the ethanol plant. And of course, this is a very positive production method that helps the environment, not just in Nebraska, but of course around the country. So a very good thing. We also had worked very hard to make sure that we expanded the use of ethanol by increasing the blend to a year-round E15. That was supported by the president, something that again I think had broad range support within farm country certainly, but a very good thing for the entire country. And so the waivers kind of work in the opposite direction from a farmer point of view, and so while much good work being done, and certainly the year-round E15 being a good thing, the waivers are a negative to that, and so it's certainly very disappointing. Obviously, some have used stronger words than that, but we continue to emphasize to the president and that it's important that we we move this great industry forward and that these waivers aren't helpful. There are some signs and been some conversations that there may be an announcement that might be helpful in this area, but again, nothing definite at this point.
Any confidence that anything meaningful will happen there?
Well, I just really can't say. You know, I'm like a lot of others disappointed that they went ahead with the waivers after having done some good things and promised that they wouldn't. So again, we just continue to work as hard as we can to encourage the administration to fulfill the commitment of the RFS.
Yeah, so let's shift to trade here. You know, the trade war with China basically blocked a huge market, right, for Nebraska and Iowa and all of U.S. ag. At the same time, it seemed to boost competitors, right, in Brazil and Argentina and other countries. So with no end in sight here in the fight with the Chinese, those other markets become more important where Nebraska can export to, right?
Well, that would be true. And of course, we've got a number of different areas of trade that we're working on. There's the USMCA, the agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. There are our largest customers, and they're our most logical customers because they are close to us. So it's important that we get that trade deal done. That would be helpful. We also have issues with Japan, and the administration is working to make a deal with Japan. We were supporters of TPP. I think most people in Nebraska and farm country supported TPP as, again, an opportunity to move the great products that we raise and grow here in Nebraska around the world. That didn't happen. The president has said he wants to do bilateral trade agreements, and we've continued to say, well, then let's get those done. So obviously there's an opportunity there with Japan as we speak, and other countries, former TPP countries, and then there's opportunities you know, in other places in the world as well.
You were just in Asia, where you were in Vietnam and Japan, right, with Governor Ricketts on a state trade mission. How important are these state trade missions when the federal picture is so uncertain?
Well, they're extraordinarily important, and of course, one of the concerns about the trade issues related to China is that most of us that have been involved with this know that it takes a long time to build relationships with trading partners, and so we have to work hard to make sure that those continue. There is great news when you look at the opportunities that there are in Vietnam for Nebraska products, for U.S. products. They have a rapidly growing population. They have one of the fastest growing economies around the world, and they want to do business with us. So there's some very exciting news there, some opportunities. We also spent some time in Japan, and certainly, you know, we need to get rid of the tariffs that we have with Japan right now that have been expanded, but they continue to import a lot of beef, and there's great opportunities for Nebraska products there as well. So in spite of a lot of negative things happening in farm country this year and in Nebraska, there are some great opportunities there.
Bottom line, Steve, and quickly, are you confident that 2020 is going to be any better than 2019?
You know, that's really hard to say. You know, I think that the future is good for agriculture, but I do have concerns. As you interviewed a number of younger farmers and you heard their concern that they have about whether or not that they can continue in the future, that's where my concern is as well with our young farmers and ranchers. I often say that if we do what's right for young farmers and ranchers, the rest of us will be fine. I mean that for those of us in agriculture and everyone else here in the state of Nebraska and around the country. So that's where my concern is. That's why we work very hard to make sure that we can have the best environment for agriculture that we can possibly have here in the state of Nebraska and in the country.
All right, Steve, thanks for joining us here this morning.
Very happy to be on. Thank you.
Well, next here on Chronicle, fields of opportunity. Many farmers are buying into the hemp hype. Could it be the new cash crop of the Midwest? We'll show you how Nebraska researchers are looking to find the hardiest hemp seeds to succeed in our soil. First, a reminder that your comments are an important part of this show. If you want to be heard, email your comments to news@ketv.com. Remember, we love hearing from you. We'll be right back.